Well, my friends, today we have a very unexpected piece of Star Wars news. In a brand new interview, Mark Hamill has once again opened up about the controversial portrayal of Luke in The Last Jedi. We've been talking about this for 7.5 years, and in that time, Mark has said some pretty contradictory things about the movie. He's gone back and forth between defending it and criticizing it, and there's even a 25-minute video on YouTube documenting every time he tried to warn us about Episode 8. Because he's flip-flopped, it's kind of hard to know where he stands most of the time, but if he's being honest with himself, I think in his heart of hearts that initial reaction is how he really feels. Every time since where he's tried to defend the movie, it's because he's tried to rationalize it to himself. And that brings us on to today, because he just did it again, to try and justify Luke ending up as a hermit, a depressed, hopeless Jedi, isolated from his friends, living on Ahch-To. Mark says he came up with a much darker headcanon backstory for Luke. One which is darker than just Ben Solo turning to the dark side. Because, as Mark once said, if Luke ever found himself in a position where he lost hope, he might isolate himself for a little bit, a couple of weeks maybe, but he wouldn't have abandoned Leia and Han. And so the actor provides a new explanation, and it matches quite a lot of fan theories that we talked about back in 2020, after Luke appeared in The Mandalorian. How there might have been a seismic, life-changing event between the events of episodes 6 and 7 that caused Luke to give up entirely. It's not perfect, it is still very much out of character, nothing can change the sequel trilogy and the damage done, but if the Mandoverse does provide some extra context, it could, maybe lessen the blow, maybe just a bit. I understand those who say all hope is lost, Luke is ruined as a character, but in the same way the Clone Wars gave some extra context to the prequel trilogy, I've always seen the Mandoverse maybe doing the same for the sequels. It's not perfect, I think Disney and Lucasfilm fumbled the bag, but because Jon Favreau said right from the outset, he wants to tell the stories between episode 6 and 7, and there's a lot of stories in there, they should try. In this case I'm following Nemik's advice, and not the advice of Yoda. Remember this, try. So let's take a listen to what Mark Hamill said. The reason Luke is a recluse. Here we go.
I thought, what could make someone give up a devotion to what is basically a religious entity, to give up being a Jedi? Well, the love of a woman. So he falls in love with a woman. He gives up being a Jedi. They have a child together. At some point, the child, as a toddler, picks up an unattended lightsaber, pushes the button, and is killed instantly. The wife is so full of grief, she kills herself. Because I think about, I hear these horrible stories about these children that find unattended guns and so forth.
So I think Mark's premise is pretty good. I don't agree with all of the stuff with the lightsaber and the kid, and the real world messaging he's trying to bring in there. For the Star Wars universe, a child having an accident with a lightsaber might be a bit extreme. Instead, I do like the point about him having lost his wife. And this could be a way they bring in Mara Jade into canon. I've heard some Star Wars legends / EU purists say no, don't do this, don't ruin the character of Mara Jade, if you're gonna do it you've got to make it the EU stories, don't try to be overly ambitious, don't bring her into canon. Well, I think that would make more sense. Luke losing all faith in his Jedi religion has to stem from something more than just losing his nephew to the dark side. He lost his temple, all of his students, but that extra dimension of something so personal to him could be the missing piece. And if in canon they did have children, like he said, maybe the kid died. I don't know if I like the method he suggests. Maybe they can fit the story into the framework of what we already know. Maybe Luke's child died at the hands of Ben Solo the night of the Jedi Temple destruction. Maybe he dies at the hands of Snoke. Maybe he's kidnapped by the Remnant. There's a lot they can do with this, even if I don't agree with every single thing Mark just said. But it's always devastating to me hearing Mark talk about this, because it's been 8 years, and I don't think he's fully over the way Rian Johnson treated Luke. But in this interview he defends him. He says he's lovely, he's a great filmmaker, both statements I agree with, but I think The Last Jedi took too big of a swing. And many fans are still not over it. So let's look at the way people responded. Disney really should and probably still could introduce Mara Jade, and have her and Luke get married and have a child. Maybe the child dies during Ben Solo's tantrum, and that, along with the death of the new Jedi Order, causes Luke to be a hermit. So to me, this makes sense. But some people who like the sequels disagree. This person says, Luke doesn't need a fridged wife or kid. His exile makes perfect sense with what's already in canon. He failed his nephew. his family, his students, and couldn't see a way to help get things back on track at the time. If you like The Last Jedi, that's great, but the problem I have with this, and I'll talk about Star Wars Legends in just a moment, but if you go from watching Return of the Jedi straight to the sequel trilogy, there is such a disparity in the characterization of Luke. And don't get me wrong, as an audience, we understand a lot of time has passed, there's a lot he's probably been through, people change, their outlook on life changes, and you can understand why there are a million reasons that Luke Skywalker isn't the same, but you're talking about the catalyst for the return of the Jedi, someone who's become a legend in the galaxy. They needed to have shown us the reasons he became the way he did. The current explanation is just too weak. He's literally the anti-Luke. He's not the Luke George would have envisioned. He's gone through his ups and downs, but he wouldn't isolate himself like that. His dialogue, his demeanor, his attitude, something terrible must have happened, beyond what was already revealed. So when this person says him failing his nephew and his family and his students, Luke would bounce back. He would form a new academy. He'd go away for a while, meditate in the Force, seek the advice of Obi-Wan and Yoda, and try and fix things. The last thing he would do is isolate himself in the unknown regions. Another counter-argument I've seen to this is George Lucas would have done the same. In his treatment for episodes 7, 8 and 9, his Luke Skywalker also exiled himself. While that's true, the reasons are very different. Luke didn't become a miserable hermit. He was meditating in the deeper mysteries of the Force. He was advancing his Jedi training, not stepping away from it. Now if you compare The Last Jedi to the expanded universe, Luke's portrayal in Rian Johnson's movie is even worse, because while Luke did have brushes with the dark side, and while there were occasions where he felt very lonely and very sad, he always had that hope for resilience. The best example I can give you is at the start of Heir to the Empire. I'm going to use the comic adaptation to illustrate this. Luke was feeling really down. With the New Republic coming to power, with the reputation he had gained, he felt the entire galaxy's weight on his shoulders, and he wished Obi-Wan was still alive. But when he catches himself feeling so depressed, he tells himself to snap out of it. He says, "Stop it. Jumping at shadows isn't going to solve anything. I'm having nightmares. It's the stress of creating a new government. There's no magic wand to make everything better, not even for a Jedi." But can you imagine this Luke going away to Ahch-To Island, giving up the fight when the Resistance needs him the most? The Last Jedi to me feels like an Infinities comic, the what-if Star Wars universe scenarios. And in that sense, it's a great story, but for the canon episode 8, you can understand why fans are really frustrated about this. Do you think Mark is right? Should Lucasfilm work on another story between episodes 6 and 7? Maybe try to remedy how we see him by the time of the sequel trilogy? Or is it too late? Share your thoughts in the comments down below, my dear friends. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.